somewhere within a mile of where you are sitting right now? There are plants growing that your great-grandmother would have bent down and picked without hesitating. Plants she recognized, plants she trusted, plants that for thousands of years ordinary people used to fight infection, close wounds, break fevers, and support organs that most people never think about. Until those organs quietly stop working. And right now, today, every single one of those plants is being ignored, pulled up, poisoned, bagged and thrown in the bin because someone decided they were weeds. Here is what that decision is actually costing you. Clinical researchers across the UK, the US, and Europe are publishing peer-reviewed studies confirming what healers have known for centuries. The most potent, most accessible medicine on this planet did not come from a lab. It grew out of the ground, uninvited, in your backyard. While the supplement industry was charging you $40 a bottle for extracted compounds in a capsule, the same compounds were quietly growing back in the lawn you paid someone to kill. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is chemistry. Today I'm going to show you 20 of those plants. Not folktales, not internet myths. Documented plants with measurable, studied, confirmed biological mechanisms. Stick around, because number 4 on this list is a plant that soldiers in ancient armies carried specifically to stop battlefield bleeding, and a 2024 research review just confirmed exactly why it worked. Number 9 is now being described by researchers as potentially comparable to pharmaceutical expectorants for lung health. And number 19 is the subject of serious clinical attention for activity on the exact same neurological pathway targeted by prescription sleep medication. If you want this kind of content every week, hit subscribe right now. Let's get into it. Here are 20 forgotten wild plants, ranked from extraordinary to things that will make you question everything you were told to pull out of your garden. 1. Dandelion. The liver doctor hiding in your lawn. You have almost certainly pulled one of these out of your garden this year. Maybe this week. Sit with that for a moment, because what you pulled up was one of the most complete medicinal plants in existence. Every single part of a dandelion is medically active. The root, the leaves, the flower, the milky white sap. Each one doing something different and documented. The root is one of the most well-studied liver support plants on Earth. It stimulates bile production, improves liver enzyme markers, and has shown in clinical research to increase the body's detoxification capacity. The leaves contain more potassium per gram than a banana. Vitamin A, C, and K at levels that rival pharmaceutical supplements. And the root contains inulin, a prebiotic fiber that directly feeds beneficial gut bacteria, while its bitter compounds simultaneously stimulate digestive enzyme secretion. The people spending $30 a month on probiotic supplements could just dig up their lawn instead. Dandelion got labeled a weed because it grows everywhere and cannot be monetized. That is not a botanical judgment. That is an economic one. 2. Stinging nettle. The pain that heals you. The same plant that burns your skin when you brush past it in a hedgerow is doing something remarkable inside your body when you prepare and consume it. Stinging nettle is one of the most nutrient-dense plants that grows wild in temperate climates. Iron, calcium, magnesium, vitamins A, C, and K at concentrations that would cost you serious money to replicate in a supplement stack. But here is what is making researchers pay attention. Studies confirm nettle inhibits NF-κB, one of the primary drivers of chronic inflammatory disease. A meta-analysis found significant reductions in allergy symptoms in regular nettle users. Now here's the question no one asks. Why did every traditional community across Europe rush to harvest nettle shoots every single spring without fail for centuries? The answer is not that they were hungry. It was because they were recalibrating their immune systems after winter. They knew the timing mattered. Modern immunology is only now catching up to that instinct. And the sting itself is not the enemy either. A controlled UK trial on deliberately applying fresh nettles to arthritic joints significantly outperformed placebo for joint pain relief. Nature's counterintuitive pharmacy, working exactly as it was always supposed to. 3. Broadleaf plantain. The first aid kit in your pavement. Not the banana, the flat, oval-leaved plant growing between the cracks in your pavement. along every footpath, every verge, every car park. Plantago major is one of the most universally distributed medicinal plants on Earth. Indigenous Americans called it white man's footprint because it appeared everywhere European settlers walked. The leaf contains aucubin, an iridoid glycoside with documented anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and wound-healing properties. A 2024 research review identified real clinical potential for plantain in managing chronic wounds, including pressure ulcers and diabetic foot lesions. But the traditional use is even more immediate. Chew a fresh plantain leaf into a poultice. Apply it to an insect sting, a cut, a nettle burn. The relief is not psychological. The biochemistry is real. Emergency medicine, growing beneath your feet. And most people step over it every single day without knowing what they are walking on. 4. Yarrow. The soldier's herb. That science just verified. 3,000 years ago, Achilles used this plant to close the bleeding wounds of his soldiers on the battlefield. That is where the scientific name Achillea millefolium comes from. And a 2024 research review finally confirmed the mechanism. Yarrow contains aelin and achillinin, compounds that activate platelet aggregation and accelerate blood clotting in open wounds. 3,000 years of battlefield medicine, validated in a peer-reviewed journal. But yarrow does not stop at wounds. Combined with elderflower and peppermint as a tea, it creates what traditional British herbalists called fever tea, a 3-plant remedy for respiratory illness, used across Europe for centuries. It works by promoting sweating and supporting the body's own immune response, rather than suppressing it. The mechanism is documented, the tradition is ancient, and the plant is growing wild along almost every roadside in Britain right now, waiting to be picked. 5. Elderflower. The spring medicine with a 2-week window. Most people know elderberry. Far fewer take advantage of elderflower. Those cream-white flower clusters appear for a narrow window, perhaps 2 to 3 weeks each late spring. The people who know to harvest them have access to one of the most effective anti-inflammatory, antiviral, decongestant plants available without a prescription. Studies confirm flavonoid content, quercetin, rutin, kaempferol, with measurable antiviral activity against influenza strains. As a hot tea at the very onset of a cold, elderflower is not just warming you up. It is interfering with viral replication and supporting your immune response speed. Miss the window, and you wait another year. Traditional communities never missed it. 6. Chickweed. The skin healer. You mowed this morning. Most people mow it before 9 a.m. and never think about it again. Chickweed is both one of the most nutritious early spring greens available and one of the most effective topical plants for inflammatory skin conditions. Medical herbalists use chickweed preparations clinically for eczema, psoriasis, and chronic skin inflammation. The science points to rutin and coumarin compounds with documented antipyretic effects, meaning it stops itching. For anyone spending significant money on pharmaceutical topical creams, the fact that this plant grows uninvited across virtually every temperate garden in the world should feel like something between a gift and a betrayal. 7. Burdock. The blood cleanser. With roots deeper than you think, traditional medicine across Asia, Europe, and indigenous North America all arrived at the same conclusion about burdock, independently. This plant cleans the blood. Modern research has identified arctian, a lignin compound in burdock root, with documented antioxidant activity and measurable effects on liver function and blood glucose markers. In Japan, burdock root is called gobo. It is eaten daily as a vegetable, not as a supplement, not as medicine, just food. And the sticky seed heads, that inspired the invention of Velcro, are attached to one of the most medicinally significant root vegetables on Earth. That fact has never stopped being true, like most people just never heard it. 8. Wild garlic. The Forest Pharmacy Open. 1 month a year, if you live near any woodland in the UK or temperate Europe, you know exactly what wild garlic smells like in April. That sharp, green, alive smell rising from the forest floor. What you may not know is that wild garlic contains allicin and sulfur compounds at concentrations comparable to cultivated garlic. In a fresh, biologically active form, the body absorbs more readily than dried or processed versions. Studies document antimicrobial, antifungal, blood pressure reducing, and cholesterol modulating effects. The traditional spring ritual of wild garlic soup or pesto was not simply a pleasant seasonal habit. It was immune recalibration, performed every spring by every generation that walked these forests, without knowing the biochemistry, and achieving the outcome anyway. The forest was their pharmacy, and they always knew when it was open. If you are watching this and realizing you have mowed, pulled, or sprayed at least 3 of these plants in the last month, hit that like button right now. 1 second. It helps this video reach the people who genuinely need this information. Subscribe if you haven't already. We are not even halfway through this list. 9. Mullein, the forgotten lung plant. Respiratory medicine had a plant, long before it had an inhaler. Mullein, tall and silver green with a spike of yellow flowers, has been used across European and Native American traditional medicine, specifically for lung conditions for centuries. The leaves contain saponins and mucilages that coat and soothe inflamed respiratory tissue, act as expectorants, and have shown antimicrobial activity against several respiratory pathogens in laboratory settings, including, in early research, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. This is the plant I mentioned at the beginning, the one researchers are now calling comparable to pharmaceutical expectorants. It grows wild on roadsides and waste ground across Britain and North America. The plant people remove for looking untidy is doing something measurable for the lungs that a bottle from a pharmacy cannot always replicate. 10. Comfrey, the bone knitter, with a clinical trial behind it. Knitbone is the old name, and it was not poetic license. Allantoin, the primary active compound in comfrey, has been confirmed in clinical research to accelerate cell proliferation, the regrowth of tissue, cartilage, and bone matrix. A randomized controlled trial published in Phytomedicine found that a comfrey root extract outperformed diclofenac gel, a common pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory, for pain reduction and functional recovery in ankle sprains. More effective than a pharmaceutical, from a plant growing in your garden. Use comfrey externally. The alkaloids in the leaf can stress the liver with heavy internal use over time. But as a topical poultice or infused oil, comfrey is delivering healing that most people would pay significant money for at a sports injury clinic. 11. Red clover, the quiet hormone balancer. Red clover contains isoflavones, plant-based estrogen precursors that have been studied for effects on menopausal symptoms, bone density, and cardiovascular health. Multiple clinical trials have confirmed meaningful reductions in hot flushes with regular red clover isoflavone supplementation. The supplement industry sells red clover extract in capsule form. The actual plant grows freely in every meadow, verge, and uncut lawn in the country. 12. Meadowsweet, the original aspirin. Aspirin was synthesized from salicylic acid. Salicylic acid was first isolated from meadowsweet. That is not metaphor. That is pharmaceutical history. Meadowsweet contains natural salicylates that reduce fever, relieve pain, and reduce inflammation. But in their natural buffered form, they are significantly gentler on the stomach lining than synthetic aspirin. Traditional medicine used meadowsweet for gastric ulcers and digestive inflammation. The plant that gave the world aspirin is simultaneously protective of the very tissue that aspirin can damage. That is the difference between a whole plant and an extracted compound. 13. Self-heal, the plant named for what it does. Prunella vulgaris. It grows in every lawn that hasn't been treated. The traditional name is entirely literal. Self-heal has been used across European, Chinese, and Native American medicine for wound healing, sore throats, and immune support. Modern research has identified rosmarinic acid and luteolin as its primary active compounds, both with well-documented antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity. Researchers are currently investigating self-heal for antiviral properties, including preliminary work on herpes simplex virus inhibition. The weed in your lawn is the subject of active antiviral research in university labs right now. That sentence deserves a moment. 14. Goldenrod. The kidney cleaner nobody planted. German Commission E, the authoritative European body for herbal medicine assessment, formally approved goldenrod as a treatment for urinary tract infections and kidney inflammation. It promotes diuresis, reduces urinary tract inflammation, and has antimicrobial activity against common urinary pathogens. It grows wild across British and American countryside and roadsides in late summer, covered in yellow flower spikes that most people walk past without a second glance. 15. Cleavers. The spring tonic. Stuck to your coat right now. That sticky plant that attaches itself to your clothes and your dog. Traditional European spring medicine used cleavers as the primary lymphatic tonic. A plant that stimulates lymphatic drainage, supports clearance of metabolic waste after winter, and acts as a gentle diuretic. Modern herbalists still rate it as one of the most useful lymphatic plants available. It is best used fresh, juiced, blended, or prepared as a cold infusion, and it is completely free. It is probably stuck to your coat right now. 16. Wood sorrel. The vitamin C emergency ration. Small, clover-shaped leaves, slightly tart to taste. Wood sorrel grows in woodlands, hedgerows, and shaded gardens across the entire temperate world. The tartness is oxalic acid, but the vitamin C content is remarkable. Historically used by sailors and explorers as an emergency scurvy prevention plant when citrus was unavailable. The leaves, the flowers, and the small bulbs are all edible and medicinal. Most people mistake it for clover and ignore it entirely. 17. Hawthorn. The heart plant. With 30 years of research behind it, hawthorn berry and leaf preparations are among the most thoroughly researched plants for cardiovascular support in all of herbal medicine. Multiple clinical trials have confirmed improvements in heart function, exercise tolerance, and reduction of symptoms in people with mild to moderate heart failure. The flavonoids in hawthorn, specifically oligomeric proanthocyanidins, improve coronary blood flow, reduce arterial resistance, and produce a measurable positive effect on cardiac output. Hawthorn hedges line almost every rural lane in Britain. Their berries ripen red in September and October and hang there, ignored, while the same compounds in supplement form are sold in health food shops for 15 pounds a bottle. 18. Feverfew. The migraine plant, a medical journal confirmed. The name tells you where this plant was used for centuries, and clinical trials confirmed it. A landmark double-blind trial published in The Lancet found that regular feverfew consumption significantly reduced both the frequency and severity of migraines. The active compound, parthenolide, inhibits platelet aggregation and reduces prostaglandin synthesis. Two mechanisms directly implicated in how migraines develop. Feverfew grows freely as a garden and wayside plant across Britain and North America. The people who eat 2 or 3 fresh leaves daily in a sandwich to prevent migraines are not engaging in folklore. They are using a plant with a peer-reviewed trial in one of the most respected medical journals in the world. Standing behind them. 19. Valerian. The natural sleep switch. Here is the one I mentioned at the very beginning. Valerian root contains valerianic acid, a compound that modulates GABA receptors in the brain. GABA is the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, the neurological brake pedal. Prescription benzodiazepines, the class of drugs including Valium and Xanax, work on the exact same receptor system. Clinical research on valerian shows measurable improvements in sleep quality, sleep onset time, and anxiety reduction, through a mechanism biologically related to the most commonly prescribed class of sleep medication, without the dependency, the side effects, or the prescription. Valerian grows wild across British and European countryside. It's been used for insomnia and anxiety for over 2,000 years, and the pharmaceutical industry then created an entire drug class targeting the same receptor. Neither fact cancels the other out. Both are simply true simultaneously. 20. St. John's wort. the sunshine plant that rewires your brain. And here we arrive at number 20, the most researched medicinal plant in modern clinical literature, and somehow, still one of the most underestimated. St. John's wort, Hypericum perforatum, has been the subject of over 40 clinical trials for depression and anxiety. A Cochrane review, the gold standard of clinical evidence synthesis, concluded that St. John's wort was more effective than placebo and comparably effective to standard antidepressants for mild to moderate depression, with significantly fewer side effects. Hyperforin and hypericin, its primary active compounds, modulate serotonin, dopamine, and noradrenaline reuptake. The same neurotransmitter systems targeted by most modern antidepressants. It blooms yellow in midsummer, along hedgerows and meadow edges. The flowers stain your fingers red when you crush them. That red pigment is hypericin. The medicine is in the color. Traditional healers harvested it on the summer solstice because that is when it flowers at peak potency. They did not know the neuroscience, but through centuries of careful observation, they found the timing. And they were right. 20 plants, most of them growing within a mile of you. Every single one overlooked, misidentified, or actively destroyed by the same world that is simultaneously paying premium prices for their extracted compounds in capsule form. What I want you to take away from this is not a foraging checklist. It is a different way of seeing the ground beneath your feet. The people who walked these hedgerows and woodlands before us did not have pharmacies. They had observation. They had bodies that gave them feedback. And over generations, they built a medicinal knowledge system so accurate that modern pharmacology keeps arriving at its doorstep and confirming the mechanisms, one study at a time. These plants are not alternatives to medicine. For many people, in many situations, they are medicine. The words are new. Yet the knowledge is ancient, and the plants have not gone anywhere. They are still growing right now. In your garden, your verge, your local park, your hedgerow, waiting to be recognized again. Drop a comment and tell me which plant surprised you most. Which one are you already using? And which one are you going to look for this weekend? I read every single comment. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now and ring the bell. We post every single week. The knowledge is here. The plants are outside. The only thing left is to look down.